My name is Amira Valle, and I have been working on social emotional education with young children for more than 10 years and mindfulness practices. But today we're going to talk about learning environments. So I hope that you like my presentation. And okay, just let me see how we go further. Okay, so this last year we have been facing an unprecedented thing in the whole humanity. This pandemic has changed the way we see things, the way we do things, and it's been like a horrible storm that is facing us, and that it's like if we were in a rough sea and with all these huge waves, and sometimes we do not know what to do. So John Kabat-Zinn, who brought mindfulness practices to the West, he tells us maybe, how can I go? Okay, you cannot stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. So right now, during the pandemic, many times we felt like there was nothing we could do about that. But we could learn some practices and some techniques that would help us to surf what we're facing. And I lived in Miami for 10 years, and we had many hurricanes in Miami. I was there during Katrina, and it was a pretty scary thing to face those huge winds and that storm. But what we learned is that in hurricanes, there is this rough part of the hurricane, but then in the middle, in the center, there is the eye of the hurricane. And then the storm comes again. So we can imagine that this pandemic is like a hurricane. And right now, we have the opportunity to be in the eye of the hurricane, where everything is more calm and where we can stop and think what we have been facing and imagine a new future where we will have the same challenges that we have been facing last year, because maybe this coronavirus will not be evacuated forever, but it will be there. But we have learned so many lessons from this past year. So what I'm going to ask you is that right now we can close our eyes, if you're comfortable closing your eyes, and imagine, you can put your hands on your table, and just one finger, you will lift one finger when you do one deep breath. So we will inhale and exhale, and we lift one finger. Then another finger. Inhale, exhale, then the other one. The other one, and the last one. We have done 5 deep breaths, and what we have done is that we have stopped for 5 seconds. And can you see how your body feels after stopping and mindfully breathing for 5 seconds? It brings us to the here and now. So that now that we are in the here and now, I ask you to try to think, what did you learn this last year? What did you learn from the pandemic? Is there any good thing that the pandemic has left you? Is there any lesson that you have learned? For me, what I learned during this year is that homeschool partnerships are essential. So education could not have gone on if homes and parents were not supportive of teachers. And communication with homes and with parents is essential. So the new school environment was the homes. Most of the children learned at their homes. Also, technology has proven to be key in the shift to remote learning. Thank God for technology. If it was not for Zoom and all the technology, children would not have been able to learn this last year. Also, humanity is about connection. What our children and our teens are craving for is connection, human connection with their friends, with their peers. It's not about learning the content, the academic content that children go to school. Children go to school to make friends, to learn to socialize, to have this social interaction. Also, it has taught us that mental health is a priority. The main problem during the pandemic has been the emotional problem. We feel so scared, we feel so frightened, we feel so stressed, and anxiety and depression have been the main issues, not only in adults and old people, also in very young children. And also, and the last and more important thing is that we cannot forget our role in nature. We are not the center of nature. We are not the most important creature in nature. We are one more of all the animals and all the creatures in nature. And we have to learn to find our place within nature, because we have been so disconnected, thinking that we are the most important thing in the world, that we forgot about the ecology and nature. And what has happened? That nature has reclaimed its right to be the most important thing. So maybe we should be humble and learn that we're only one more species in this world. Okay, so if we are in the eye of the hurricane right now, if we can just make this stop, this conscious stop, and gather together all these people who really care about education, we have the chance to rethink our future. We have the chance to think what's the most important thing that we can provide to our children and teens. What's the most important place where they can be able to learn what's really important in life. And so we have this opportunity to reinvent our educational spaces. And also, when I was living in Miami and I was during Katrina, I had the chance to witness something very particular, and that was the importance of flexibility. You know, in Miami, well, in Florida, there are many palm trees, and palm trees are super flexible. With the big, huge winds, they just move and they let their leaves go. All that is not important. They just let go and they just move with the wind. And what happens if you're not flexible and you're facing a storm? You just crack. And those huge, very important and very proud trees, they just cracked with those winds. So what we have to do right now, that we're facing this huge storm, is to learn to be flexible. And this way, we will be able to survive the storm. So what we need is, in this time, to have flexible environments. We cannot change everything in 1 year, so we have to adapt what we already have to face the coronavirus. So we need to adapt our schedules, do some small changes in the classroom to be able to have social distancing, adapting the furniture, limiting the classroom capacity. Also, we can have the students in one location and the teachers can go from one location to the other. All these small changes which have already been taking place and which have the intention of preventing the disease transmission. But that's the adaptation for this moment. But what about the next generation classroom? The next generation classroom will have to provide flexible spaces for students to be able to learn at their own pace. Imagine that we were in a contest of climbing a tree, and there is a bunch of animals in that contest. And there is a monkey, but there is a snake, and there is a seal and a fish. And you will be judged on who climbs the tree first. Of course, every animal has a different ability. And of course, maybe the monkey will be the first to climb the tree. But we cannot judge the fish for not being able to climb the tree, because the fish is going to swim the fastest. So every child and every species has a different ability, and every child is different. So every child needs to have an environment where he or she can perform the best. with the ability to go at its own pace, at his own pace, so the new classroom environments will be more flexible. And they will have this ability to connect with technology. So what we need to do is design these new spaces with the ability to be connecting to technology. Either to connect with homes when children are still at home, or having the adaptability to be connected to technology. And this is a new paradigm shift. So spaces have to be flexible and fluid to better support the adaptability to these online things. But this is really great in countries such as the US, where we are right now. But I am from Mexico. And this online learning and this online teaching is a utopia in most of the countries in the world. Why? Because we do not have access to internet. Most of the families do not have devices. They do not have cell phones or computers. So we can do our best effort to teach them online, and we can have great programs and great platforms. Still, they are not good enough for our countries because we do not have access to internet. So what can we do to have this same flexibility that the classrooms need right now? When we have technology, we need Starbucks in the classroom, access to internet, front room interactivity in the boards, interactive software, content sharing, huddle spaces, learning labs, smart desktops. This is our dream. This is our dream if we learn with technology. And we can also design the classrooms to be ergonomic, where we can, every student in the classroom is able to see the front board. There are also applications to be able to design the spaces so that they have all good access to hearing, so that we have all access to sight and hearing the class. That is wonderful. And as we have seen, what we need is it to be flexible. But that will teach us only the academic content. But what we have seen during the pandemic is that the emotional life of our children and our teens is the most important. Because what happens if I am super stressed or I am very depressed? My brain will block the connection between the prefrontal lobe, that is the learning part of the brain, and the reasoning, and the emotions will connect to the autonomous system. And we will act only in autopilot. We will act with our survival response, and we will not be able to be learning academic content if we are super stressed. So the first thing to guarantee the learning in our children is that they are relaxed and they are okay with their emotions. So what do we need to provide children with that emotional regulation space? We need mindful spaces. So we said that human connection is what our children are craving for. So we need a range in the classrooms to be providing interconnectivity, to be able to connect with each other. So the arranging of the chairs is really important. And it's important that they interact with each other while learning. Also, the lighting in the room is super important. If we have very bright lights, that can be distractive. So we need to have very good illuminated classrooms, but with natural light if possible. Also, most of the children need movement in order to be regulated, because movement activates the parasympathetic system, the calming system. So having toys such as stress balls in the classroom, while they are learning, they are still regulating their emotions, so it's really good. Having background music, calming music if we need to calm the classroom, and more active music if they need to be active. nature is super important. The connection of children with nature has proven to make us all humans happy. We are part of nature, and we are only happy when we feel connected to nature. So if we can take the classes outside, that's wonderful. But if that's not possible, then bringing nature into the classroom in different ways so that children can have a direct connection to it, and that is what is called the contemplative learning. Contemplative learning is being connected to the object of attention and learn from this direct experience. So we can learn to see a flower or to see a leaf and observe it deeply and then maybe draw it or learn about it in a book. But first we connect with the object. So bringing nature into the classroom is really important. Also in the classrooms, there have to be self-regulation spaces. And these self-regulation spaces are also called for classrooms of little children, peace corners. So what is a peace corner? It's a space in the class where children can go on their own to self-regulate. And there are certain elements that are important to be in a peace corner that will help children to regulate when they are feeling a very strong emotion. It can be fear, it can be anger, or maybe they are super excited because they're having a party. Whatever it is that they need to regulate, they can use maybe mandala coloring books, relaxing instruments, a pillow or something soft to lie down and read books, stuffed animals to practice breathing, a bell or a xylophone, a Huber sphere, and suitable books. The Peace Corner is a dedicated and safe and nurturing space somewhere in the classroom or a school for students to use when they might be feeling overwhelmed and stressed, angry, or emotionally superstimulated. And when they are feeling alone, they can regulate. Imagine a turtle. When the turtle is nervous, it goes into the shell. And when it's ready to interact with the world, it goes out of the shell. So this Peace Corner is like if we go into our shells and we can regulate. And so we have different elements. Elements such as this emotions glass that we can do very easily. We can use glycerin, water, sparkles, and a little 2 drops of soap, and we can make it. They can shake it, and when all these sparkles are in the glass, it's like if we are very emotionally stimulated. Maybe fear, maybe anger, and we just let it rest and breathe. And when all these sparkles go to the bottom, we have this clear space where we can really decide and think with clarity. That's what we need to do to learn. If we are full of emotions, we just let rest and breathe, and then when we are calm, we will have this space of clarity. So that's a very good, useful tool to have. Also, images of children blowing, because when we breathe and we blow, we're activating this calming response, this parasympathetic system. So images of children blowing candles, blowing dandelions, spin wheels, bubbles, whatever it is that inspires them to deep breathe and then exhale. Also, these hover spheres, they are great to regulate breathing. Inhale and exhale rhythmically. It helps them so much to regulate. Also, with seashells, they can listen to the sea in the seashells. So they're focusing their attention in their senses. This will really help them to be calm. And so here we have some pictures of children using those instruments. This is the emotions glass that I was talking to you about. And these calming spaces or peace corners are not only important for little children. We have been doing them also with high school and even university students. We can choose a space in the school where we can adapt it and have maybe cushions or puffs, something where they can just sit and relax and have these like lava lamps or even cards with different breathing techniques or different activities that would help students to regulate. This has been done in Mexico in the public high schools and has been really, really successful because we have no idea about the stories that children and teens bring to the school. Sometimes they have had horrible morning with their parents, or they are in a very violent neighborhood, or they bring all this to the classroom. And if we're not aware, then they will not be able to learn. We can do whatever we want as teachers. If the children is not regulated, or the teen, they will not be able to learn. So these spaces are super important. I was telling you that we need flexible classrooms, and this is not an invention to the future. This is something that has existed for more than 100 years. We have the Montessori classroom. Maria Montessori was a visionary, and just observing the children, she was able to design these learning environments which provide everything that we have been learning about the next generation classroom. Why don't we look at the past and see what has already been done and is successful? We do not have to invent the black thread. We have so many great examples that we can take. So in the classroom, in the Montessori classroom, all the materials are accessible to children, and they can go and take whatever they are feeling drawn to. So they take the materials, they learn on their own, they can interact with other children, but every child is learning at their own pace. And that's what is important, because it's an inclusive education, and it's a way to have every child learn at his own pace. So this is a great example of a flexible classroom. And you can see so many children of different ages, from 3 to 6 in the classroom, interacting, each one of them working very profoundly concentrated in their own work. So this is a great example to take. Also, we have a new experiment that is going on in Spain mainly, and that is called the forest schools. What are the forest schools? That is also a great educational environment if we are able to have it. Schools are inside the forest. The trees are the tables and the chairs, and the elements in the forest are their learning tools. So children are deeply connected with nature. And children learn in such a happy environment. We know that, for instance, in Japan, when somebody is having an emotional breakdown, the doctors told them to have a forest bath. That means going to nature and being in the forest and recovering that peace and connecting with nature. So forest schools are a great example of a new educational environment that will allow children to know the place of human being within nature. So these spaces with nature will allow them to know that we are not the supreme creature in nature. We're just part of all the ecosystem, and only if we recover that humility of being part of ecology and ecosystems, then we will be able to move on as species connected with nature. Because coronavirus is a great example of what happens when we are deeply disconnected. So this is my proposal for new classrooms, rescuing what is really good from the past and incorporating technology in the countries where it is able to be done. Well, thank you. Is there any question? No? Okay. Oh, yes. So, I'm sorry, I do not listen very well, but are you asking me about the connection between educators and parents? Yes. Okay, yes. Because we have been thinking about this next generation classroom as something isolated from the home. But what we have seen during the pandemic is that was it not for parents, education could not have been going on all this year. So it's really important to enforce the communication between the home and the school. Also, schools have to be aware and conscious of the technology available in the homes. Because many schools, like in my country, private schools have a lot of platforms developed, and they have done a great effort to have these platforms. But what happens if at home there is no internet? What happens if there is no device where children can connect? So what we have to do is materials that can be sent home, and we can give the instructions to parents and have these classes. In my country, what we have done is that since most of the homes don't have internet, the Ministry of Education has done capsules of pre-recorded classes, 10, 15 minutes, and they have been broadcasted in public television because most of the homes do have at least one television, and so children can watch the classes in television and have the materials with them. So the school will provide the materials, and they will use them while watching the television. So depending on the technology available at home is that we have to adapt the contents of our classes and the way the children will be connecting with the class. Also, when we use technology, what it has been seen is that parents can think that children are connected to the class, but they can just be skipping the class and playing video games and just pretending to be in the classroom. So it's very difficult for a child to be able to connect 8 hours a day through a screen to the content. So children need to learn with all the senses, with manipulative things, sensorial things, and it's going to be a great effort, but if it's possible to send these materials home, children should have these material things, sensorial materials to be able to learn as well, because learning through a screen is terribly tiring for a child or even for a young people. So, any other question? No? Well, thank you very much.